I think it was just because we just always have creative projects. So we have the band together, and then we do films together, and we're just about to start filming one now. But I think when I was 14 and he was 16, we decided let's get Super 8 out and go. And we've now moved up to 16 millimeter.
Oh, nice.
Which is obviously pricey, but we're kind of reserving that for certain projects. But we're with a group of friends. We've been working on this big documentary project that we're quite excited about since 2016 we started. And that a lot of that is shot on film. So over the years, we've just been kind of saving up and getting loads of rolls of Super 8 to kind of, But that is a completely different experience than digital.
Oh, yeah. And it's so... Like here, it's a little tough because the only labs that can really process it well are the really professional labs.
Right.
So you have to have bank to use it. But when you're shooting, where are you sending it to get developed?
So there's actually loads in the UK, just loads of labs that have like really good scanners. So we use just one. I think it's like Two Brothers again or something that I think they're affiliated with Kodak, but they just like do it out of their house. But they have like a 6K scanner, and it's pricey, but it's not over the top. Because there are some in London that are way more. Because we live just outside, but there's loads of companies in the UK that seem to do it. There's a few which are like the main ones, but you can get like process paid, so you buy it on their site, and that includes the scanning and the developing. So they send it to you, and then you just send it back with your order number, and then you wait, and it takes a while obviously, but then you just get sent it on Google Drive in like 6K, which is quite cool. And obviously you get the film back.
Seems like you have more resources to keep using film than we do on this side of the pond, so that's nice.
There seems to be a revival at the moment. I see loads of like ads and stuff using Super 8 and stuff at the moment, and I feel like since we got into it, there's been more and more.
It started with Vimeo, I think, because there was this filmmaker on Vimeo who had this idea of scanning a Super 8 positive in like 4K resolution, and people were like, "Holy moly!" I'm like, "Yeah, that's what film can do." Nobody thought of that until like 2016. And so, I think that's kind of what like got people thinking more about it, going back to it. And then,
and I feel Star Wars,
but Star Wars.
I feel like, because when they decided, because obviously the thing was they decided, from my understanding, to shoot The Force Awakens and the new ones on film, not for the stylistic reason, but because of money, right? Because it's such a big franchise. If they shoot in digital, they're locked into, let's say 8K or whatever they shoot it in. But with film, in 20 years, they can scan it at whatever quality they want, obviously. So I think from a financial standpoint, they said, well, if we shoot on film, we're going to be able to, we don't have to remaster it years down the line. We can just keep rescanning it as long as we preserve the film. And I feel like that sent like a domino reaction of just every major franchise film like slowly moving to film for financial reasons.
It's future-proofing. That's what I always called it. Future-proofing.
Yeah, future-proofing it. Obviously, you have like, the people like Tarantino and that obviously shoot on film because they love film, which is obviously a lot more. I appreciate that a lot more, but you can understand,
I mean, if I had the backing that they have, I would shoot on film too.
Yeah.
In 2 seconds. My favorite experience as an editor was editing 16 millimeter film on a flatbed table. Literally just cutting the film, taping it together. Then you're doing the same thing to the magnetic stock, which is also 16 millimeter, only it's audio, and it's made of metal. And you could get cut on it. It was great. And then you take this taped up monstrosity to a lab, and then they would take your negative and they would carefully just conform your negative. They would cut your negative according to your edits. And then they would have this special glue to like connect the negative together, and then they'd put the negative through a process so that you were getting a print based off that negative, and that was your final movie. And I'm like, that's such an artistic, crafty process.
And it's like you're using your hands. I mean, we're recording a new album at the moment, and we've decided to use a lot more tape. We've gone back to tape, and it's the same as like the equivalent of film, because Also, it's weird because we did this just I was testing out the tape machine and rigged it all up to go on separate. I've got an 8-track and a 4-track, and I decided I would do the 8-track. We'll rig everything up, and I started recording onto tape, and the performance got so much better because I just knew I've got one chance to do this. It's the same with film, obviously. We're like, we got to get it right in this take, but it's crazy because digital, video or film, obviously you have to have the space for it, especially when you're shooting, really high res, but you kind of are like, oh, we've got so, we can do so many takes. It's not such an issue. But there's something about when film, it's like, okay, you got so much film, so much light. We got to get it, and we got to get it now. That pressure, I think, can be devastating, but it can also really, I think, encourage like production.
Yeah,
well.
I was actually recently when we were kind of in the zone of fractals where you were in the beginning of mixing. Before you got the music. I was actually on eBay looking at those old NAGRA recorders with the 1/4-inch tape.
Yeah.
And because I'm like, I wanted to see what it would take for me to actually start recording all my dialogue on NAGRA tape. And those things were down in price a few years ago. Now they're back up in price because people want them again.
Yeah. There was a whole tape revival with like Mac DeMarco and all these like indie musicians who started using 1/4-inch again, and suddenly it went through the roof. I remember a few years ago it was like 150, 200 pounds, and now they're like 850 quid just for like an 8-track, which is crazy. It's the same kind of with film. I feel like over the next few years, the more people, if it continues, people to use it as kind of like a trend, I feel like it's gonna shoot up even more for like film cameras and stuff.
Yeah, and I'm actually okay with that. I think that there needs to be an analog normality, just so that like, in the event that I'm ever funded for real, I would totally go analog. I would go on film. I would go on NAGRA tape. I would find a sound mixer who's a relic from the 90s who can just come and work that equipment.
Yeah.
And just do it analog. I'll digitally edit because, in the end you got to make concessions, but I love the idea of just capturing all the raw material on analog.
Yeah, there's something about it, I think, and it's like knowing that it's like the light is hitting the film, because it's obviously, and I think digital in all, with audio or with film, it provides so much convenience, and it makes it so accessible to everyone, which I think is the pro. But I think what I find so fascinating is, I would have thought, with like, film, like cameras becoming digital and audio becoming digital, and kind of with that, everything becoming a lot more affordable. When you look back at kind of the, like cinema and music of the 70s and kind of the 80s a little bit, but, 60s, 70s, there's such a golden era of kind of audio, music as an art form, film as an art form. You kind of end up with this, this era where you think if only they had access to everything. And then now you think everyone has such easy access, someone could just make a movie on their phone, make a song on their phone. And it's crazy that there's so much stuff out there, but there isn't that much there's a lot, but there's not those gems, I feel, as available as they were back then, as it seems. But I wonder if it's because you had to go through such a process to have something made, like to have a record made in the 70s, you had to get signed, you had to go into a studio and use the tape, or with a film, I wonder if because of that pressure and that process, it had to be great.